We're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and seek the truth with FBI whistleblower and common sense extremist Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. It's Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, and today we're going to get to some interesting intersections of interests. And that's going to be over at the Department of Justice, where there has been a 16-month battle brewing underneath the surface. Also, big tech is eroding families, and schools are closing for the NFL draft in Pittsburgh. So let's get after it. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's not necessarily true. The enemy of my enemy is my enemy's enemy. Interesting bedfellows. You can have some intersection of interests. The Venn diagram from one group might overlap with another, and those groups might be diametrically opposed. That's why I kind of have a problem with these right track, wrong track polls that will be circulating around, and they'll be assigned to the president of the United States. It'll be sort of an assessment, a quick back of the envelope math. How does America view the president's performance? Right track, wrong track. Well, if there's a Democrat administration in there, Joe Biden's the president, the human Roomba, the auto pen administration is at the helm. Right track, wrong track. Well, you would expect the Republicans to say wrong track no matter what. But communists dyed in the wool declaring that we shall have some sort of Marxist utopia. They're probably going to say wrong track also because Biden wasn't communist enough. So I don't think the data you get from a right track, wrong track poll is necessarily showing that there's a broad agreement amongst the dyed-in-the-wool communists and the small government, small r Republican constitutional form of government preferring sort of people. They agree on it, but for the exact wrong reasons. So let's talk about some overlapping of interests on a whole host of different stuff today. And I think we can agree on the problem, but not necessarily the outcome or the solution. Or we might actually agree on the outcome, but for diametrically opposed reasons, and you can be the enemy of my enemy in that case. All right, let's go to the New York Magazine for an extremely long, thousands of word piece about the Department of Justice. Our first piece of the day, the revenge plot inside the battle of the Justice Department to get Trump what he wants. And from the very outset, these people, New York Magazine, do not like the current administration. It's Donald Trump. He's mean, orange, literally Hitler. And no matter what the DOJ does, they're going to see weaponization. Now, the lack of self-awareness or the goldfish type of memory that they have, or the way that they're going to paint the goings-on under the Biden administration, the Merrick Garland Department of Justice, is laughable. It's very rich. But the enemy of my enemy is my enemy's enemy in this case. And if they're able to identify weaponization as it currently is constituted, I think I'll stand by them here. So fully cards on the table here. If they can identify something, then I will actually say, yep, you're right, that's a problem. Now, do I expect them to return in kind? No, they weren't throwing the flag during the Biden administration. But we're going to be objective. We're going to be commonsensical. Let's dig into this thing. And again, it's a very long piece. And it's also interesting to show the sort of drama that is going on behind the scenes now that the Pam Bondi DOJ is no longer the Pam Bondi. It's under Todd Blanche, temporarily there in an acting capacity. So the way the piece actually starts, and it sure gives you the indication of the perspective they're going to take, is that Department of Justice federal prosecutors were working in earnest up to the last possible minute before Donald Trump was sworn in a second time to become president because they really wanted to bring forward all their January 6th prosecutions, knowing full well or expecting full well that the dogs would be called off, there might be a pardon issued, but they wanted to create a memorialization for our posterity about they were after justice for all of those grandmas who walked through the people's house, a 24-hour a day open building, publicly accessible, and that was the greatest threat to our sanctity democracy. So, his first day, Donald Trump signed an executive order that told the DOJ and intelligence agencies to reverse, quote, an unprecedented third world weaponization of prosecutorial power. Now, New York Magazine was very offended by that because they wanted to save our democracy from all the people that were waving flags on January 6th. So, hardly a bedfellow that is somebody that you share similar sympathies for. But I think just as a broad idea, if the government is weaponized and a president comes in and says, I want to look at that as a problem, we should all sort of get behind that. The term weaponization is one of Trump's rhetorical tricks. Oh, he's just a trickster, isn't he? A fancy way of saying, I know you are, but what am I? They had tried to get him, so now he would get them back. That's the fear. Their fear is that he's going to retaliate. Donald Trump, mean, orange, literally Hitler. Well, certainly his experience out of office for the 4-year interlude between Trump Part 1 and Trump Part 2 should reveal something. Donald Trump was a victim of weaponized government. You'd have to be pretty much blind. They indicted the guy on like 95 different charges, 4 separate cases to go after this dude. You would think that weaponization would be front of mind for him, but he was hardly the only victim of it. He was just the most famous one. So Trump Part 2 comes into office and brings in some of his acolytes, his upper echelons, veterans of his legal defense team. Now, if you didn't know, Pam Bondi represented Donald Trump during his first impeachment. That was the perfect call to Ukraine with Volodymyr Zelensky when we didn't know his name at the time. Pam Bondi was on the impeachment defense. Then you had Todd Blanche, who's now the acting attorney general. He was the deputy attorney general under Pam Bondi. He was the lead attorney on the Alvin Bragg Manhattan trial. Also, somebody else on that was Emil Bove, who's now a judge, but he was high ranking in the Department of Justice. And then you had Ed Martin. Ed Martin, who was devoted to the president, he was brought in to be at the helm of the Weaponization Working Group. That was that group that was stood up. They had a mandate. There were 7 different things they had to go after, some personal grievances. And I think the individuals they were assigned to go after are some evildoers like the Letitia James of the world, the Alvin Braggs of the world. Also, they needed to dig into January 6th. They had to dig into the radical traditional Catholic situation where the federal government went after individuals who were interested in attending Latin masses, saying that they were going to become terrorists because they had ideology that was pro-traditional marriage and pro-life. They were going to be racially motivated, violent extremists, white supremacists. Also, moms protesting outside of school boards, and they wanted to dig into some of the whistleblower retaliation. That's been an abject failure at this point, but what is really the reason for that? So this piece from the New York Magazine goes into a bunch of different routes, a bunch of different lanes. They dig into that guy that we brought up recently, Jared Wise, who was a former FBI agent who resigned in 2017 and then was subsequently prosecuted under January 6th. He was brought into the DOJ to assist Ed Martin with the Weaponization Working Group. And now Jared Wise has stepped away saying, look, it can't be fixed. It can't be rectified. Now, I don't know Jared Wise. Never interfaced with them. I know people who might know him. I'll have to ping them on really what this dude's experience was. But the New York Magazine gives you a little bit. He apparently was the supervisor on a joint terrorism task force and said, you guys are going after people that you shouldn't be. So I think that bodes really well for the type of dude who Jared Wise was, because the guy gave up a $150,000 a year job and said, I ain't down to clown for that. But again, the enemy of my enemy is the enemy of my enemy. The New York Magazine, they have a problem with that. The New Yorker is saying, well, you should just follow orders. They actually put that in there, just follow orders. We'll get there, guys, I promise. The intersection of our interests. And another long part of this entire piece, again from New Yorker magazine, covers down on Eagle Ed Martin. Title of the piece again, The Revenge Plot. Ed Martin told higher ups that he needed an investigative staff because he was overseeing this weaponization working group. His attempts to muscle up the working group met immediate resistance from Todd Blanche and his staff. The idea was that the colleagues within the weaponization working group would put together a series of investigative reports, including one on J6, and that could potentially build a giant public dossier for redress and prosecutions. We're going to find out who the evildoers were, the people in a position of public trust who swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, to protect their fellow citizen against fraud and force, and instead bastardized that position and went after them. Did not view the law as a shield to protect citizens, but rather as a sword to go after your political enemies. Now, that included James Comey and Letitia James, but those, for reasons that we've gone into before, those have fallen through at this point. These reversals did not put a stop to Ed Martin's efforts to go after some election fraud stuff. That was the pet issue, as it's identified here by the New Yorker, on the power trip, the revenge plot in the DOJ. I think there are legitimate questions about the electoral outcomes, particularly in 2020, when everybody went to bed and one dude was ahead, and then we all woke up and another dude was ahead, and we were told that that was all in the up and up, even though people were mailing in ballots and that had never been done before, and they were boarding up windows while they were counting, and that was considered kosher. So legitimate questions that have never been adjudicated and brought out. Digging a little bit further. One of the principal aides for Ed Martin is this guy named Neil McCabe. I know Neil a little bit. He's a journalist. He worked over at Red State, I believe. He was brought into the administration to assist with the weaponization working group. And he's got a couple of quotes here about election integrity and the efforts that he went to trying to assist Ed Martin, and the resistance, the hashtag resistance that he got from other people within the DOJ. The quote from Neil McCabe. He says that they tried to shut it down. It's important that we're trying to achieve Trump's agenda, is what he said to others within the DOJ, and we needed his help to achieve the Trump agenda. But for those remarks, he earned his first verbal reprimand. Ed Martin was informed that eventually he was being stripped of his role as the head of the weaponization working group, and he was moved over to pardons, and he doesn't even work at Main Justice anymore. It's a satellite office. Nobody wants to see Eagle Ed. Now, here's the quote that I think is very important when we're talking about intersecting interests. The process is the punishment. They think they're profound for throwing this out there at the New Yorker magazine. I've said that for a long time. Other people have said it for a long time. The process is the punishment. When you have the ring of power, when you have all the tools at your fingertips to punish your enemies, reward your friends, you can make the entire ordeal very painful, even if at the end of it, you don't wind up bringing criminal charges and you know you're not going to do it. It can be very costly and very harmful. So the quote that we get from New Yorker, the process is the punishment. It's a saying among criminal defense attorneys who know that even an investigation that yields nothing can be ruinous to a target's reputation and finances. Insert Amy Nelson and Carl Nelson. The principle works in both directions, and now it is Trump's adversaries who claim they are being crushed by prosecutorial power on grounds far less justifiable than those cited against Trump or the J6ers. So no self-awareness. They think that the new targets of the DOJ are getting a far worse shake than J6ers and Donald Trump. J6ers, people who walk through a public building with the permission of police, people who didn't even go into the building, people who attended a speech by a sitting president on the ellipse and then were put on a no-fly list by the Department of Homeland Security. Thinking of Christine Crowder, wife of a federal air marshal who had a stroke and was paralyzed on one side of her body. yet was surveilled and labeled as a domestic terrorist for 2 years. And the only reason that she was pulled off was because my buddy Kyle Serafin talked to my other buddy, Sonia Labasco, about it on his podcast. And then the FBI freaked out and course corrected. That's just one example. We could go into, I don't know, Brian Cole Jr. currently rotting as a J5 pipe bomber that's associated with J6, even though there's no connection with J6 other than what the weaponized Department of Justice did with the pipe bombs in order to get sentencing enhancements on people who walk through the Capitol building. Now, the New Yorker magazine is saying it's worse now. All right. I'll be honest. I'll give a fair criticism here. I'll hear what you got to say. Who you got? Because I'm against weaponization, even if it's not as bad as what January 6th was, even if it's a little bit. No amount of government weaponization is acceptable. So let's see what they got. And I'll call balls and strikes. Number one was the 6 Democrat lawmakers who created the video, the military veterans, senators, and congresspeople who said to the military, you should disobey unlawful orders. Yeah, it says that in the U.S. Military Code of Criminal Justice. So were they prosecuted? You had a mean tweet from the president about it, and I don't think there was any further action on it. In fact, I think that those representatives wound up getting a lot of donations to their coffers, so they actually benefited from it. But I don't know. I mean, I guess a mean tweet from the president is a little bit of weaponization. We'll give you that one, kind of. You also have agents serving search warrants in Fulton County on election integrity matters. No further information. NFI, who was victimized there. Expediting deportations in defiance of due process. No, due process is afforded to illegal aliens via the deportation process. They don't get the same process that Americans get because they're not citizens. So swing and a miss on that one. And then we're going to pursue protest groups under anti-terrorism laws. All right, I'll give you that one. First Amendment protected activity. If the Department of Justice and the FBI are trying to infiltrate groups, trying to find the retards out there who are saying that they're Antifa and they're labeling them foreign terrorist organizations in order to suppress their ability to express their opinions like a bunch of idiots, well, then I'm on board for that. That's weaponization that shouldn't be happening. But other than that, not seeing too much. So before we move on to the next one, at the beginning of this year, the White House communicated its displeasure with the pace of the weaponization working group's progress. Todd Blanche's aides prodded, and some of the reports are said to be nearing publication. This is the big reveal from New Yorker magazine. Once those reports get published, there could be action. What we wind up getting is the same result we always get, though. And I think we can have intersecting interests on this. We're not going to actually fix the problem. We're going to ping pong back and forth with control. You might identify one side enemies as your enemies, and they might identify another side's enemies as their enemies. And we're just going to use the ring of power against each other. Now, I'm rolling my eyes at individuals that the New Yorker magazine has put out there as the victims of weaponization. I don't frankly see it. I'm trying to be as fair and broad in my interpretation as weaponization as possible. But I might have some blind spots. I might have some biases. I'm fully equipped to admit that. Okay, let's just say there's weaponization going on there. Can we agree that it's an out of control organization? Right now, because the individuals writing over at New Yorker don't like the people in charge. They see the weaponization, and when it ping-pongs back to Governor Gavin Newsom, American Psycho, under his presidency in a couple of years, they won't see it now, but maybe we can be honest. Could we possibly have some intersecting interests here and say, number one, out-of-control weaponized Department of Justice is not acceptable and would necessitate full dissolution? Shatter and scatter the Cheka into 1,000 pieces. Scatter them to the wind. That's the only course correction. Throw the ring of power into the volcano, like J.R. Tolkien taught us a long time ago. And secondly, government investigating government never ends well for the people. Government investigates government and determines that the government did nothing wrong, or if they did something wrong, it's too late to correct it. Or here's what we can do. We can just do more training. We can just add more systems of government to the government so that the government, when it fails, will have more government to lean on. That's really what it is. We should just write some strongly worded letters, some harshly worded reports coming out of the Department of Justice. That means no accountability ever. And again, not acceptable. We should be able to agree on that. Now, you would hope that a robust, well funded, equipped, and very experienced and interested Department of Justice might be interested in something that we all should have intersecting interests in, and that is the question of amnesty versus amnesia. So I've got a piece over from Uncover DC. It's called COVID Amnesty or Amnesia. Let me pull it up here. And this site is not cooperating with me right now. Here it is. Okay, good. All right. We didn't see any modicum of accountability, nothing with coronavirus post 2020, post 2021. We've all just gone into amnesia. We need to have a reckoning for this. There cannot be amnesty. Now, anybody who wants to move past it, anyone who wants to say, let bygones be bygones, it's just too big of a lift for us, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. And I'm going to do the whole thing that the Washington Post and NPR and New York Times likes to do, and that is hit you in the feels on this one. This story, COVID, amnesty, or amnesia, it is one of the most egregious things I've ever read. When I read through it, I actually reached out to my buddy Tracy Beans, who's associated with Uncover DC, and said, did you vet this case? Because this sounds like a ridiculous internet screed by an insane person, someone who the FBI would probably entrap as a retard in a terrorist plot. No, it's true and verified. So let's dig into this one and see if we have some intersecting interests all across the board here that we need accountability just for this person, just this one. Okay? This is a woman who did not give her name because she fears reprisal. Still, in 2026, she reflects back on what happened to her in 2021 when she checked herself into a hospital in August. A couple weeks later, she gets intubated. They put her on a ventilator, even though her oxygen levels were in the mid 90s and she had normal blood pressure. She wasn't allowed to speak with family beforehand. A couple days later, transferred to a different hospital, confined to a bed, unable to eat or drink by mouth. She loses over 100 pounds and she starts freaking out. She tries to call 911 saying, get me out of this hospital. They're torturing me. I've lost 110 pounds. And when she did that, her phone was seized by the hospital. She then got put on the remdesivir protocol. That was the Ebola drug that didn't work to cure Ebola, but the pharmaceutical companies had to try to recoup. Was it Gideon was the pharmaceutical manufacturer? The remdesivir was a big loser for them. So they said, I bet we could use it for coronavirus. And the protocols went into the hospitals, even though it didn't work on coronavirus and it was killing people. She was put on that. She started to get some bed sores that required surgery. She had a sexual misconduct experience by a male bath aide and a male nurse, and she filed a complaint with the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals, and they declined to investigate it. And this was during coronavirus. I mean, you got to stay home, stay safe. We can't go out there and investigate. I can attest to that at a federal level. As an acting supervisor at the time in the FBI, I was told to circulate the information to my subordinates. Don't do any work during this time. We don't care if you investigate violations of federal law. Just stay home. So, sure that was kind of going on at every level. This woman also had multiple consent forms signed in her name, even though she was in a medical coma. They were just scribbled lines on paper giving her permission to do things to her, including a marriage. She got married while she was in a coma to somebody who there was a restraining order against. And to add insult to injury, the notary public who authorized the marriage license was on a work visa and not an American, and ergo not able to be a notary public. The dude was from Ghana. So fortunately at this point, that marriage to the dude who this woman was so fearful of, she sought out a judge to get a restraining order signed. that marriage has been annulled. But it did happen while she was completely unconscious and in a medically induced coma. She had some other problems happening. It's not over yet. She was moved to an ICU, eventually found unresponsive, went into cardiac arrest. Then she had some bloodstream infections, blood clots, full time dialysis, placed on emergency oxygen. All of this cost her $3.5 million. Over $3 million in medical treatment, even though her insurance only covered 300 grand. So she's on the hook for over $3 million. This all happened without her permission. She was denied any sort of access to family, nothing. It happened over the course of a couple hundred days. The medical establishment did this to this woman who's still so fearful of reprisal that she will not give out her name and let herself be an example of an out of control system that went after people for no reason. Now, where is the intersecting interest on this? Well, the pharmaceutical and medical establishment, they're very, very invested in having amnesia here, right? They want to be called healthcare heroes, the best amongst us. They were doing TikTok videos. And then when they got aggravated by people who wouldn't get the clot shot, the gene juice jabbed into their arm, they did everything that they could to try to kill them while they were there and blame them because they just wouldn't go along. They're very interested in amnesia. Well, as are people who are in our government, right? Left and right. They either lined their pockets because Big Pharma was donating to them, lobbyists coming at them saying, hey, it'd be really good. We could push this out there. And you could say, just follow the experts. The experts, they were pulled onto TV. Their organizations were getting touted. Medical journals saying they know everything. You got to listen to them. And then you also have people that just don't want to face the worst thing that ever happened in my memory of this country. The most catastrophic administrative and managerial decisions that happened while Donald Trump Part 1 was in office, bar none. There is nothing that comes close to the galactic failure that Donald Trump had in his final year of his first administration when coronavirus hit. And people on the right don't want to confront it. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to put on the red hat, scream MAGA, 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 and move on to the next thing and blame Democrats. So there is a lot of intersecting interests here, all pointing towards we just need to move on. Don't talk about it anymore. Bury it. Let bygones be bygones. Nope. As a society, as a country, there needs to be a reckoning still. Anthony Fauci is out there, and he's only one. We have never had any accountability for anybody at all. Nobody paid a price for it. Now, I know that I'm in the vast minority when I call for mass accountability. Can we agree that one person should be held accountable for this woman's experience? This is just a blasphemous experience that she had, and she's just one. All right, let's get off of coronavirus. I get fired up about that one, probably more than anything else, even more than FBI stuff, to be honest, guys. And also, let me take a breath and give you a nice reminder here. Make sure that you head on over to Spotify and follow us there. If you happen to be on YouTube or Rumble, checking us out live, everything at AmRadPod. Do all those things, the follows, the likes, the subscribes, the thumbs up. That really helps us. Leave some comments there, trying to trick the algorithm. Spotify, we are now monetized. I got approved. So I'm waiting to see what the next course of action is going to be. But again, a big, gigantic thank you to everybody out there who's gone forward. And if you haven't already, just head on over at AmRadPod on Spotify. Give us a follow one time a week. Just one. Push play, push mute. You don't even need to listen to me. That would be very, very good. All right, let's talk about some big tech and how we may have inadvertently destroyed family structures in the interest of actually, in the most benign and innocent way, of trying to promote it. So I saw this over from @amuse, and it's an online article on Twitter where I will put the link in the show notes for today. Headline: Swipe left on civilization, how Silicon Valley is quietly destroying family formation. Pretty interesting stuff. So it goes into the problems that are with these Tinders and the Bumbles, all these online dating platforms, and how they are set up to, you would think theoretically, allow the formation of healthy relationships, but really the algorithms are doing the exact opposite. So the financial logic of these companies depends not on users finding lasting partnerships and leaving. It's actually designed to get you to continue to use the app. It's like any sort of social media app. They want you scrolling, right? They want your eyeballs continually on there. That's why there's all these different features, the alert bells. You get that dopamine hit. Ooh, somebody liked what I want. I'm going to use this more and more and more and more. Same thing goes for these dating websites or these dating apps. It's kind of like, why would you invent a longer lasting battery or a longer lasting light bulb? Well, if you did that, then people aren't going to buy your product as much. You've effectively created a product that ends when people use your product. You want them coming back all the time. You want that potato chip, right? Bet you can't eat just one. Same thing applies here. So the algorithms are not really designed to get people to have a relationship and then leave the app. They're designed to have them continue using the app. That's what algorithms do. And the problem here is not just we're losing time of day and not being productive because we're looking at Instagram videos. It's resulting in relationships declining. And now we might have a population problem. So back again to this piece again, swipe left on civilization. 2026 study found that a 1% increase in dating app activity is associated with a 0.4% decline in marriage rates. So using it more to date is now resulting in a decline in long-lasting relationships. Now, Tinder did a campus rollout, which basically resulted in a whole bunch of sex and no relationships. Stunner, that comes from the Institute of Most Obvious Things. But the breakdown along the genders. The top tier men, like if we're looking at a scale of 1 to 10, let's be honest here, where do you rank yourself? So the guys who were 10s, by and large, as a whole, all the women went for the guys who were 10s. Why would you go for a 9? That's sort of the way that the study found. Women were saying, look, this 9, he's looking pretty good, but why would I waste my time with a 9? I'm going for the 10. But as a result, a whole bunch of women were going for a very, very small select pool of men. And those men, because they had an enormous population of women coming after them, they weren't settling down. They basically had an unlimited pool of options. Why would I settle down and have a relationship when there's a constant flow of options available? It's what's that line from City Slickers? This is an old movie, but it's still one of my favorites. He said, women need a reason to have sex. Men just need a time and a location. That's kind of the way that it worked out. And now the guys who were a 1 through a 9 have no options. And now you've seen an uptick in some depression and some mental health issues with guys that could be attached to that. And then the women are getting used and abused by the douchebags who are the 10s. And there's a lot of douchebags who are 10s out there. And then as a result, also, let's talk about the birth rates. Birth rate problem that we have is a decline, and it's specifically in the age range of like 18 to 35. Young people, prime having babies age. And it's actually rising in women over the age of 40 who are kind of beyond the point of having a lot of kids, maybe 1 or 2, and there's actually a danger associated with it. Now, intersecting interests. People who want to see young, healthy relationships resulting in lots of babies. Those who purport to be conservative, those radicals, right? The rad trads out there, they'd probably like to see these Tinders and Bumbles go away, right? What about the feminists? The feminists who say a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. They're probably really worried about the objectification of women being used and then tossed aside and asunder. They probably want to see the end of the Tinders and the Bumbles too. Some intersecting interests there. Some strange bedfellows. Maybe they need to meet and see if they can't push something along here and just really identify, it doesn't have to be evil. There could have been a benign interest here. Hey, I want to build the better mousetrap. We live in a digital age. I want the the men and the women to be able to meet each other and meet each other in ways that we've never been able to meet before. You don't have to go out to the bar. It's kind of a seedy scene out there. I mean, let's do something safe. We don't want people getting taken advantage of when they're in a diminished state because they're drunk. Let's use technology and they'll be able to meet and have these long lasting relationships and result in a positive experience for everybody. The algorithm doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. It's not its design. It's a design flaw. All right. Let's go now. Again, we'll stay on some family stuff and we can talk about this that comes from Business Wire. And I've got a couple pieces here associated with it. It's a long title. Sesame, IVI, RMA, and Costco transform fertility care for Costco members with a new partnership. Uh, Guys, Costco is offering members discounted in vitro. That's really what it boils down to. So the warehouse giant Costco announced last month, March 9th, that it will give members discounted access to IVF, egg freezing, and some artificial insemination. The problem, though, one of their partners here, and you see it in the headline, IVI, RMA, you're not going to remember the name of them. It doesn't really matter. They also provide implantation genetic testing of embryos and also some fertility options for members of the LGBTQAI plus #_ rainbow kamikaze community. So Costco is looking to help the customers and people who are really excited about IVF and making more babies. They're partnering with Costco, which gives you discounted rotisserie chicken, as are the people who are trying to do genetic stuff like say, we don't like that feature, so we're just going to terminate that embryo. And also, we want the trannies to be able to have babies too. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you also see this piece over from the NPRs of the world. Headline: over-the-counter medication abortion? These researchers say it would be safe. So this is from a couple of days ago. It's from this writer here whose name is Selena Simmons Duffin. She's got the hyphenated name because she's a girl boss, but we'll call her Selena Simmons because the patriarchy always wins. And what wound up happening was a research team studied this 168 patients, and they've now published a paper in the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, which published papers on how herd immunity wasn't a thing during coronavirus, how masks work, and how everybody needed to get the gene juice. That reputable medical journal, they are now publishing this study, which looked at 168 people who were tasked with looking at a box, the marketing aspect to a box. If you look at this box and it's got the baby kill medicine inside, is this box good? Do you get information out of it and come to the right conclusion that a doctor would come for you? That's basically what this study did. And shocker, based on the information on the box, patients assess whether they would be a good candidate for the medication that would kill the baby inside of them. And stunningly, they found that, quote, people did a really good job at self-assessing their eligibility, unquote, based on this box. You're a pregnant person, and the box offers you a way to take a medicine and not be pregnant anymore. And you're going in to see a doctor who's going to determine if you're a pregnant person and wants to give you a procedure that would end in you not being pregnant anymore. The intersection is pretty much self-explanatory. I don't know why we needed a funded study on that, but a quote here from one of the doctors involved. Her name is Sonia Borrero. She said, "It is important to acknowledge that FDA decision-making around medication abortion may be influenced by the politicization of reproductive health care, such that scientific evidence may compete with ideological and legal pressures in shaping regulatory outcomes." Well, she sounds really smart, but let me see if I can dig into this lack of self-awareness that this doctor has. She cites the FDA. She said that things can get politicized, but we really just need to cut through all of that and get to the medical reasons and the science. Oh, you mean an FDA that said that you should get remdesivir or remdesivir, the Ebola drug that didn't treat Ebola, but we had to recoup the money. So let's just authorize it as an FDA for, oh, that's right, coronavirus. or you should inject an experimental gene juice into your arm. And if you don't, you should be shunned from society because you didn't get the mark of the beast, so you can't engage in commerce anymore. In fact, you should lose your job. Your company, if you employ over 100 people, you now are required to demand people put that stuff in their arm. Take the clot shot, or you can't function in our society anymore. That's the sort of people who are involved in this. The intersecting ideologies and the interests here from the big pharma is very clear. I mean, they want people to be able to take the medication. The medical community is populated by people like this Dr. Sonia Barrero, who she wants to murder all the babies. And the women that are interested in doing it are as well. And wouldn't you know it, their assessments all just co-aligned. And they co-aligned with the writer here. I mentioned her before. I don't often cite who the author is. Her name is Selena Simmons Duffin. So I dug into her, and I'll throw her up there if you happen to be watching us here. I'm sorry. You can see, yeah, she's just like a childless cat woman with a nice dude haircut. And you should know that Selena Simmons Duffin reports on health policy for National Public Radio. She joined the science desk about 7 years ago, just a few months before coronavirus was discovered. And during the pandemic, she covered the CDC and the vaccine rollout and ran a year-long project surveying state health departments on contact tracing. So she was all in for what happened to us 6 years ago. She was all about the contact tracing. Stay home, stay safe, and shut down your non-essential business. And then she got activated in 2022 when Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Dobbs decision, and she launched a project called Days and Weeks, exploring how abortion bans are changing people's lives. So her interests align. She wrote a puff piece in NPR saying that a study of 160 women who wanted to get an abortion, looking at a box of pills that said that they could get an abortion if they took the pills, and then talking to a doctor who assessed that, yes, you are pregnant and you can kill the baby, all those interests align. Yeah, that's big J journalism going on from NPR. All right, I got a couple more that I want to get to. Let's come off of the medical and healthcare stuff, and let's talk about the NFL draft and how schools are being shut down in Pittsburgh. This comes from the Washington Post. It's an opinion piece. Headline: Why closing schools for the NFL draft is a bad idea. This came again from the Institute for Very Obvious Things, but it is an interesting piece. And he opens up talking about a couple things that I didn't know about that are unrelated entirely. But if anybody here in the Rumble chat or the YouTube chat is from Pittsburgh or is Pittsburgh adjacent, I guess you probably know what the Pittsburgh chair is and what the Pittsburgh toilet is. I don't know. The Pittsburgh chair, I guess if you shovel out a parking spot in the snow and you could put a chair there and nobody is allowed to take it, you all are way too friendly in Pittsburgh. And then there's the Pittsburgh toilet where you have an unfinished basement and you just put a random toilet down there. It's supposed to be some ode to the steel workers where they would come home and then they would be able to do their business before they came upstairs. I don't know. Pittsburgh's a weird place, but they're hosting the NFL draft and 500,000 losers, turbo grade losers, are coming into town to come and see this thing. So there's a challenge here. We're going to have a multi-day event where people are going to be selected to play professional football, and it's going to interfere with the school traffic, but not really. There's only one school actually that's affected by this. There's 54 public schools, and only one of them is near the downtown area. But never let a crisis go to waste, right? Like Rahm Emanuel, Pittsburgh public schools are shutting down for 3 days. So many parents are scrambling to find someone to watch their kids. They need the childcare. 18,000 students are being cut off from free daily breakfasts and lunches. And some, this is the third concern. Number one is childcare. Number two is free food, free being government subsidized being money that's stolen from you. I mean, taxed in order to pay for it. And then number three is, yeah, there could be some learning loss too. So without remote learning, as he's happy to point out here in this piece, they wouldn't be able to confront the coronavirus pandemic. That's a toss back to an earlier piece we discussed. But maybe they should look into how they're leaning on remote learning a little bit too much. So a couple ways that we can intersect here. This guy is all down for shutting down the schools for coronavirus. Me, definitely not. So, remote learning, are we leaning on it too heavily now? Yes, entirely. There shouldn't be remote learning going on at all. Learning in general being a problem that we should probably confront. Yeah, yeah, he's on that one. But prioritizing that behind government subsidized food and childcare? Yeah, I'm not down for that. All in all, though, I can agree. You don't shut down the schools because of the NFL draft. And I think ultimately we do align on one principle overall, and that is we have far too many boys who can shave in this country. If you are concerned about the NFL draft to a point where you say, yeah, shut down those schools, that's not a problem for me. I just want to find out, who's getting taken in the seventh round. Then you, sir, I'm not even going to call you a sir. You're a boy who can shave. You're doing toy lightsaber events. Come on, man. Grow up. Go ahead, get married, make people, and actually pay attention and go to a damn school board meeting and find out what's being taught to them. All right. I got one more. Let's get to this one again from the Washington Post. And it's again on education and some interesting intersections here. Headline: More states adopt college entrance exam touted by conservatives despite concerns. Washington Post is very concerned about a new test out there. It's called the Classic Learning Test, the CLT, that is rivaling the SAT and the ACT because some of the military academies, the state of Indiana and the state of North Carolina, are now requiring their public colleges and universities to accept this in lieu of an ACT or an SAT score. So while all three tests have verbal and math sections, the Classic Learning Test, the CLT, also features passages from primarily philosophers, religious scholars, scientists, and authors in Western civilization: Plato, St. Augustine, Dante, and Shakespeare. It's embraced by many Christian schools and homeschool families, and that's a problem. That's a problem for the Washington Post because the exam's growing popularity has sparked questions about whether it's a reliable measure of skills, unlike the SAT and ACT in the eyes of the WAPO. Some critics worry that its list of authors could push out alternate points of view and give students a quote, sanitized and triumphalist version of history. They want you to be doing the 1619 project over at the Washington Post. And here's a quote from a Vassar college professor. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Quote: My biggest concern is that students won't learn the truth about history. This professor, his name is Curtis Dozier, a professor of Greek and Roman studies who wrote a book about how far-right politicians use the classics to advance their worldview. He's really worried about those radical traditional Catholics and those anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists, the sort of people who protest against school boards when they want to gay the kids or make them wear masks, or had questions about an election outcome where we went to bed and one guy was ahead and we woke up and the other guy was ahead. This guy is majorly invested in this, right? He doesn't want to have this CLT. Ugh. That's for the homeschools and the Christian schools. This is a problem here. Well, all three tests look at verbal skills and math skills. So there's pretty healthy intersection there. That would seem to be something we can get along with. But I guess just promoting Shakespeare is a problem for the likes of the Washington Post and this Vassar professor. And you should also know that SAT and ACT started allowing calculators. That was actually before I took it. I was allowed to use a calculator on there, and that was a diminishment of the standards. And also, the ACT eliminated the antonyms section. Synonyms, antonyms. Antonyms mean the exact opposite. And they are also, because kids are in a TikTok culture, they're not doing the long reading sections anymore for reading comprehension. The sections for reading comprehension are only a couple sentences long now. So hardly great standards that they should be held up for this classic learning test to meet. Where can we agree? The ACT and the SAT, and I mean, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like the CLT, what are they? They're IQ tests. Why do we administer them? Let's be really clear about it. The reason that we administer these tests goes to the reality and the law in this country that says that it is illegal for an employer who is canvassing whether or not to hire candidates for an open job to give an IQ test. So what do? We can't give an IQ test to the person applying for a job. So, well, we're going to go to the colleges. The colleges that require an ACT, SAT, or now CLT IQ test in order to get in. And those people who score a certain level on those IQ tests go to certain colleges. So we just got to meet a middleman here in order to do that. Oh, and then also require the people to go into $200, $250, $300,000 of student loan debt in order to prove they have a high enough IQ to attend a certain university, which is propping up a bunch of communist agendas, and then enter the workforce with the debt on their shoulders so that they can go and be beholden to their employer. Can we just get rid of the middleman? Why don't we agree on that? Why don't we agree that it's not unfair to have an IQ test to say, I need you to have a certain level of intellectual bandwidth in order to do that? Certainly a professor of Roman and Greek studies at Vassar University, he probably has a pretty high opinion of his IQ. He probably thinks that he could get certain jobs that other people, like those watching on the AMRAD pod, those rubes, the plebeian swine who don't believe in things like you should probably read some Shakespeare along the way, or wearing a mask is stupid, walking one way down grocery aisles is retarded. He probably thinks that he's entitled to certain jobs that you're not. I would bet he would stake himself in some sort of competition of IQ. And if he is a higher IQ, if his intelligence quotient, his intellectual bandwidth is better, well, then he can have that job. Why don't we just do that? I bet I could get him to agree to it. We could have some intersecting interests on that one. All right. So we have reached the end of today's program for the American Radicals podcast. And we got pretty in depth here. We got pretty deep. I found, though, a fun palate cleanse because it's always funny when you have your own language made fun of by people who speak others because they think we sound funny. We think they sound funny. But we can all agree it's always fun to laugh with a little baby.
Bro. What's up? Okay, daddy first. Daddy say first, okay? Daddy say first. Bro, what's up? Okay, your turn. You have to say bro first.
Bro.
Mm. You say what's up very clear, no? What's up? You can say bro? Then what's up? Say what's up? One more time. Say the whole sentence. Say it. What's up?
Good stuff. All right, guys. We'll plan to be back with you tomorrow here on Rumble and YouTube at noontime Eastern. And until then, have a great day.
You've been listening to the American Radicals podcast. Find us on YouTube, Rumble, and X at AmRadPod.